We have so many stories in our lives, but our stories are not always heard. On the Hear My True Story podcast, we tell our own true stories.
Before the white car backed, our head teacher had scattered. Looking at him, I could only see his tie that was flying backwards, waving at us, and he disappeared in thin air.
I want to share my life story. I want to share my voice with the people because I know that just a small joke I can tell through this podcast, it will make someone smile.
When you ask me what I fear most in life, I would definitely respond to you and say it's fear itself.
We are fighting for togetherness. We are fighting for equal rights. We are fighting to end injustice.
You don't have to be a storyteller or writer because, guess what? Life writes the best stories.
Hear my true story.
Yeah, that's not only the training, it's also the media. If you want to know, the media is showing us always when there's a crime, they distinguish if this crime has been committed by people of color or not. And often they say they only mention if there's a people of color who has committed a crime, and they don't mention when the crime has been committed by a white person.
This is your favorite time of the week with your number one podcast.
Hear my true story.
Yo, how are dear listeners? Welcome to Hear My True Story podcast. It is me, your host, Otako. This is quite a special podcast where we tell our own stories, where we invite people to share their own experiences, where we talk about very important issues, and where we promote understanding of some of these issues. So today's episode, we dive deep into the topic of racial profiling. Well, as you maybe know, my dear listeners, that racial profiling impacts countless individuals, but it is important to remember that discussions about it shouldn't be limited to those directly affected. In this episode, we have a thought-provoking conversation with our guest, who comes from a very privileged majority community here in Germany. While our guest hasn't experienced racial profiling firsthand, they have reflected on the issue and offer a unique perspective. Together, we explore their journey of understanding misconceptions they have encountered and steps they have taken to be an ally to fighting racial profiling here in Germany. We will discuss the systematic nature of racial profiling, effective strategies for addressing it, and the responsibilities white individuals have in dismantling it. Our goal in today's episode is to foster an open dialogue, to foster an open, reflective thought to someone who is listening to this wonderful episode, and also to go deep so that they can understand deeply the positive change that they can bring to support those who are being affected by racial profiling. So, my dear listeners, before wasting your time, I would like to say get ready so that we do explore this important issue in our conversation with our special guest on today's episode.
This week's special guest on your favorite podcast.
Hear my true story.
So, you are welcome on this wonderful podcast. Hear my true story. Before I start with the conversation, I would like you maybe to introduce yourself to our dear listeners so that they get to understand who are they listening to and who is behind the computer and that microphone.
Thank you very much, Otako. My name is Gundi, and I'm from Hamburg. I'm a white person, if you want to describe it. And I live here with my 10-year-old son. I'm a mother. I'm alone with my son, and I'm educating my son all on my own. And we are living here in St. Pauli, which is or near, close to St. Pauli, which is the touristic area of the red light district, also the so-called red light district of Hamburg. And it's also called district, a dangerous district, but we hear about this later. So I live close to this district, and my son is going to school in this district and in the St. Pauli school and elementary school. And me, I'm working in a NGO, in a NGO who's working with human rights defenders.
Before I start, I just want to ask you a simple question. Yeah. So being a white person, and then you have a story to share. Yeah. You have a moment that you would like to share that made you to reflect on racial profiling, despite being from the privileged majority community of people who live here in Germany. How did this experience impact your understanding this topic, racial profiling?
Well, actually, I'm a very politically educated person, but racial profiling came up to me when my son started to go to school, or maybe I saw it even before, but in the last 6 months, I observed about 3 really clear racial profiling situations close to my son's place, where my son was playing football, or where my son is going to school, or when I went with my son to a place in an S-Bahn. So there was at least 3 situations who were very close to my son, and so it came up as a very as a very, very close thematic to me. And before that, I already took part in a group that's called it's a cop watch group, because where my son is going to school, it's a so-called dangerous zone, where people, or where there's some drug dealing going on. So the police is supposed, or has the right to go there and to watch the place, and to control people, and mostly control people of color. And there's a group from university, and also from a social center, and the church, who's there in the same place where my son is going to school, who's watching what's going on, and who in the street is to be controlled by the police, or by the civil police, by the so-called CV police. So, and then I started to watch things going on around me. And then I started to be clear that, or be conscious that people who are controlled around me were always people of color, also before when I remember situations in the public transport or just in public places, there were always people of color being controlled for nothing. And I got back, and I remembered that even when I was taking the train to Switzerland, going out of the Schengen space, the controllers came in, and they didn't control me as a white person, but they controlled my neighbor, or always who was the people of color. So I started to realize that it's getting worse. The situation for people of color in this society now is getting worse because it's accumulating. I observe so many situations.
I don't know if you as a person, if you have had a chance to talk with some people who have been affected by this racial profiling, and how has that influenced your perspective of being reflective?
Yeah, usually the people are very afraid because, I can. There's two stories I really think that touched my son and embarrassed my son also. Were usually at 15:30, every child is leaving the school building, and the school building is in the middle of the street, the so-called dangerous zone, where police is controlling people who are supposed drug dealers, and there's a kind of convenience that the drug dealers, if they were drug dealers, don't come up before school ends, or don't come up before 17:30 in the evening. I don't know, but then one day it was 15:30, and the same civil police run behind 4 people of color, and they were chasing them just in the street where the children were coming out of school. So my son came out of school, and he saw the situation, and then he saw that there were 4 young people of color thrown against the wall, the school beneath the school building, and then he went there, and as the only child, the others didn't recognize that, as the only child, and he said, "What's going on here? This is one of my friends. What has he done? Why are you using violence again? Why are you so violent against him?" And so the supposed friend of my son said, "Yeah, I didn't do nothing. I was just here. I live here because people have a housing. There's a squad who gave housing to the people coming, or the people who have no possibility to get easy an apartment in Hamburg because they have no chance to work there. And there's the right, the residential right, if you are calling for asylum."
Yeah.
So this is a situation of the supposed friend of my son. So he was asking the police, "Why does this happen now?" And then the police said, "You have to go. You have to go." He said to me, "You have to go now because things are maybe getting uncomfortable for your son." And so I said, no, I just that's the reason why I stay, because I want to know what's going on, and I don't understand the situation. What are you going to do there? And then they said, okay, we are going to check the papers now because this is a dangerous zone. Okay, and then I asked some other person to stay with me or to stay with us, but then usually the situation was, he shouted at me, the policeman, so I was afraid, and so I thought, okay, if the situation is getting worse for me and my son, we have to leave, because I don't want my son to be involved in such a violent situation. And I asked the other person to stay there and to observe things, what's going on. And so he said, yes, don't be afraid, I'm going to film it. Usually what they do, they check the papers, and they check the papers of the people, and they take them to the police station. And then the papers, usually the problem is that they have no residential rights in Hamburg, because many are coming from the countryside or whatever, from maybe, so some are coming from the south because they have friends here, but they are not supposed to be here, because they have the residential duty to stay in the Bundesland, in the district where they came to. Then this would be the reason for the police to give them a warning and say that the next time that they caught them, it would be a reason for them to get no asylum in the other place where they live. And usually when I have time and I'm on the street, I ask the people who would be controlled to accompany them, to go with them to the police station, so that the police can't be so violent to them. Most of them are or the people I accompany to the police station, they are always a little bit shy. So they are afraid even of me, because they don't know if when I offer to accompany them, maybe I could be undercover cop too. This is the problem. Maybe that this could be the problem too. And the other situation I came into was last Friday, when my son was at the football place, at the football place where he's doing his training, and then into the field there were three cops, undercover cops, running behind another people of color, and really shouting at him and putting him into the corner, putting him to his knees, and there were three people kneeling around his neck. So he was really afraid too, and they treated him very bad. And when we, as the people standing, there were people coming and talking, trying to talk to this undercover cops. The cops start to shout at the group, and they are like on adrenaline. I don't know. They are very, very stressed, so they don't answer in a normal way, and they don't tell if we ask for the name, and if we ask for the police station number, they don't tell us. They just run away, and they take the person fast with them, and they go away with the person. So I think it's not good. It's not good what's happening there in the society. It's even every day there's more stress, and I feel more violence of people who are whether controlling in the trains or controlling in public spaces places, or even controlling in places where children are. And I don't know how children could feel themselves safe in this society if even the police is violent against people.
I mean, like when you shared that situation that happened, and then your son went in to approach, the police. I think there's something that your son did that most people don't do, is to go in and confront what's happening. I think that I would say it's really nice to hear that a young person, a child, understands that no way. Why are these people running after a friend? And I want to know. And that's really, really, really nice from my perspective as a BPOC person living in Germany. It makes me feel strong when someone comes up to ask a question, why is this happening to me? Because most times when people like me are stopped and we don't have someone coming in, sometimes it makes us feel like we need support, but we can't get that support right away. And then we are in the position where we don't know whether we are right or we are in a wrong situation.
Enjoying this episode? Leave a review now.
Hear my true story.
And then if someone comes up this and say, okay, please, what's happening? We want to know what are you going to do to this person. That's really nice. I mean, also the offer you offer someone to take them to the police if they are willing, and then they are shy, is this, that if police is racial profiling people, is aggressive to people, then people don't trust the people who look like the policemen. Yeah, not like dressed up as policemen, but if you're someone, you are a minority, you're a person of color, and you're being confronted by undercover police who are not of your community, then you can't know between the two whether who is a genuine citizen willing to support me and who is also a police person willing to take advantage of my situation of being a minority person from a minority group or a minority community. Then I sometimes have such fears. As a person, I would have that kind of like, who do I trust? But again, when I feel like someone says, okay, no, let's take the step and go there, and we hear what they're saying for this person, I find that as a person, from my position, I find it good. I'll come back and say, wow, there are some nice people. So that I don't take it as like, no one is willing to understand my situation. So I would say that's really nice to hear that a young person, your child, I mean, you take initiatives to really find out what's happening. But then that brings me to another question. I don't know whether it is a question or it's not a question. And I don't know whether it is the system, that it's in the system, or is it trained in the academies of the police, or maybe the Ausbildung, where they do that. Or if you watch or you see a group of people of color or a group of migrants, you need to intervene. I don't know.
Yeah, this is a good question, because I'm curious about that also. I think the profile of people being elected to be undercover police, whether an undercover police or a controller in the S-Bahn or in the public transport, is often a profile of a person who is very frustrated, or who must be frustrated. I don't know, because people are so tense, are so tense and have so much stress. They seem as if they take drugs like drugs like I imagine soldiers took when they were in Vietnam. But there's so much pressure in them. I don't know why they can't react calm anymore, these people. And so they maybe they have a kind of enemy in their head, and this enemy must be migrants, or must be the people who are different in the first view. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, also I don't know, but I think I don't know. This is my own thinking. Yeah, because when I come to German and then I'm seated, for example, in a class where I'm training to be, for example, I'm training to be a pre-educator. Yeah, and then when I find that we are learning about how to integrate, how to integrate people with migration background, and then you find stories that are given to you that have negative prejudices. You get that? So with these prejudices that are brought in these stories to work upon them, you find that all these stories, all these cases that we have to work with have a negative prejudice, and it's attached to either the name is not German name. If it's a crime, they bring an example of a crime, but with someone with the background of migration. And at the end of the day, you end up feeling like, okay, maybe if I'm implementing my work as a professional in what field I am, these are the cases that I'm going to expect to meet.
Yeah, that's not only the training, it's also the media. If you want to know, the media is showing us always when there's a crime, they distinguish if this crime has been committed by people of color or not. And often they say they only mention if there's a people of color who has committed a crime, and they don't mention when the crime has been committed by a white person, for example. Yeah. They don't tell this. And so this is, I think the society is also in these kind of prejudice profiling. If they are also educated by media. But this is the special thing about what the example of my son, because my son, he is 10 years old, and I think many of the age of my son, they don't have these stereotypes in their head produced by media or by education. Because nowadays, I hope things change. But maybe there's a point of return when they get into a special kind of educational branch and they start to see media or the so-called trivial media who haven't changed. They all work with stigmatization of people, of groups.
Yeah. So, and then that brings me to a question. You talked about, of course, this has been inspired by the story that your son, the moment, the situation that you experienced your son to approach a friend being racial profiled. Yeah. Then I come to ask you as the parent, have you had a conversation with your son that was sparked by the situation to talk about this topic? It's a big topic, quite difficult for some parents. How do you deal with it? I mean, you.
Yeah, I talked about these, and whenever we saw a situation like that, we talk about it. And in this situation, the story I told you around the school, he was very, very, very embarrassed, and he said that he thinks the police is bad. So that he said that these people are very, very bad because they are so violent against a friend of him and against people who are. Because I told him about why I said that the system is also is difficult for these people because they have no chance to work. Because when I talked to the police, I said, why are you doing that? You know that the system is the fault that people can't work. So why are you controlling them? This is a vicious circle. You're feeding a vicious circle if you control these people. And then my son asked about the situation of these people, and I said, yes, they have no right to work here in the country because they're waiting for asylum, and it's not clear that they get asylum because the state doesn't or is working so slowly to accept their asylum. And yeah, I try to talk about asylum, migration, and the right of asylum. But I think at 10 years old, he's still a little bit too small to get the points, you know.
I may not think so, because children understand what we think that they don't understand. By the time they realize that my friend of my age is being chased over by police, why? You get that? So they understand why. Then we as adults, we think you did the right thing. You talked with him about these big issues with a simple language to understand.
Yeah.
But then we as adults, we fear to speak about it, not just only for the white parents or white caretakers, but also for the people of color and also BPO's people may fear to express or to explain the situation to these young ones, why this is happening and why it goes on like this.
Yeah, and the main thing is that I encouraged him. I said, this was very, very good that you were able to stay calm and you continued your questions about what was happening.
Yeah.
Because he was really insisting. He said, but why? Tell me why this is happening. And then the police got louder and louder and louder. And then in one moment I took him from the situation. But I took him from the situation also because I get so nervous with such violent situations that I become very, very aggressive also because I'm helpless in these situations. I'm so emotional that I have to really control myself not to be to shout at the police or to say things I shouldn't say, or because this wouldn't be so this wouldn't be so good for my son to learn that I'm helpless, but I am help. I always I can't stay cool for many minutes, some 5 minutes I can stay cool, and if I have time I can accompany people to the police station and stay calm. But if there's a situation like that, people chasing and shouting and being really, really aggressive against other people, so I really, I'm like my blood pressure is my blood pressure is high, and I'm really, really, really anxious in this situation. So I can't help. Sometimes I can't help very, very good the people in danger, because I put myself into danger to be not stay calm. So I put people into danger because I get violent against police.
Yeah, because you feel you are informed, you are really reflective about the situation, how police handles these cases, mainly targeting the minority groups. But what I would like to say is that your son's action is the best thing that a person can do for anyone that they find that is in such a situation, to ask these questions. Of course, police moves into the defensive mode because they realize that they are racist at that point, and then they feel like, okay, how do we feel like we are not losing our power? Because when you find someone stressing like the police shouting to a small kid of 10 years, that means there's a problem in the system.
Yeah.
Because when I learn working with children is to speak to them, because they have questions, they need the answers. Simple, not shouting to them, because it doesn't help. They want the answers. It's very simple. You find a kid of 3 years and they ask you a question and you have to answer the question. And if you shout to them, then you are not helping them. You are not helping the society. The best thing is to help the society, but then that goes back to the system. That's my understanding. If the police cannot answer 10-year-old very well, then that's the system.
Yeah, but I'm very, very astonished, because every time this happens to me, the policemen are about, or even women, about between 25 and 35 years old. And I ask myself, how could they dare to speak in such a way with children also? And how could they, are they not ashamed themselves to give such an image of the police? Because usually I thought also children have to be have the right to seek the police, to go to the police when they are in danger, because there could be some people, some other people, or some sexual abuse or whatever, and they don't dare to go to the police, because police are shouting at them. I don't know. There's a big problem in society if even the police is not even educated.
Yeah. I mean, the police is supposed to be educated on almost everything that we have in society. Yeah. From rights of children, they're informed. But, there's, I don't know that section of the police, but sometimes I feel if children ask us questions, they should be answered. That's the only thing I feel. Whether what profession someone is, because that's a question needs an answer.
Make sure to follow us on Twitter. Hear my true story.
Wow. Because of time, we cannot continue beyond now. So, my dear listeners, thank you so much for listening to this wonderful episode on the issue of racial profiling. I'm so happy that we have been able to talk about issues that really matter in our society. And I'm so happy that our guests shared wonderful stories, wonderful experiences, that maybe you learned something from them. Maybe you got to learn, how do I talk with children about racial profiling? How do I intervene to support someone who is directly affected by racial profiling, although I am not directly affected by it? So these are some of the things that perhaps you enjoyed in this wonderful conversation. However, in part 2 of this same conversation on racial profiling, we shall try to answer certain questions, like maybe How do you hold conversations with individuals who experience racial profiling? How do you navigate discussions with other individuals who have not directly been affected by racial profiling? And maybe you also get to know what are the responsibilities of people who are not directly affected by racial profiling. For example, the white individuals. How can you contribute to dismantling the issue of racial profiling in our society, in our systems? So, my dear listeners, join us for part 2 as we explore these topics, providing insights and actionable steps for combating racial profiling. I believe that together as individuals, we can bring about positive change in our communities, regardless of what action you take. And for that reason, I'd like to say thank you, my dear guest. It has been me, Otako, and
Gundi.
I would like to say bye for now. I hope to have you again next week on the same podcast. Hear my true story.
We not only have voices for a podcast, but also faces for YouTube. Don't miss your next episode. Hear my true story.
Thank you for listening to our podcast, Music by Edwin Matovo, hosted and produced by Otako. Subscribe to our podcast for more stories and visit us on our website, hearmytruestory.com, for more stories. All the links are listed in the show notes of this podcast.